Welcome back, students, to our language class today. In our previous class, we had learned what demonstrative pronouns are. We started with chapter 6. After that, we are today going to learn what relative pronouns are. So, please look at the points that I have written on the board so that you understand what a relative pronoun is and also learn its usage. Okay, let's look at the board now. As you can see here, children, this says that a pronoun that links phrases or clauses to another in a sentence is a relative pronoun. So we understand that a pronoun that links a phrase or clause or to another in a sentence. We know that before we know this, children, we have to understand what phrases, clauses are. A phrase is a group of words which is a part of a sentence, which mostly does not have, which in fact never has, an independent meaning on its own. A clause, on the other hand, is also a group of words which is a part of a sentence but which may have or may not have an independent meaning of its own. Therefore, the work of a relative pronoun is to join two phrases in a sentence, or its work is to join clauses in a sentence. Let us see how. Now, which are these words which are used as relative pronouns to join these clauses in a sentence? Look here at the board again. Here you will find words like who, whom, that, which, when, and where are used as relative pronouns. These are the words which join a relative clause to the main clause in a sentence. Now, to understand what a relative clause is and what a main clause is, I will give you a few instances so that you understand what a relative or a main clause is. If you don't understand what a relative or main clause is, you won't be able to understand how these are joined in a sentence with the help of a relative pronoun. Okay, let's see a few examples again. Now look at these examples, children. Example 1 says, the lady who is driving the car is my aunt. Now, the lady who is driving the car is my aunt is a sentence. It has a group of words which has a complete sense. But this sentence is made of two clauses. Okay, so clauses or phrases are always part of a sentence. As I told you, phrases do not have any independent meaning, so they are always a part of a sentence. And a clause, I told you, sometimes they may have an independent meaning, sometimes they may not have an independent meaning. So they are usually also a part of a sentence. Now, in this sentence, if you see here, the lady who is driving the car, here, the lady is my aunt is the main clause. You will find that the relative clause is who is driving the car and it is joined by the relative pronoun who. So, we find here a main clause very clearly and a relative clause. Okay, this is the relative clause here, and the relative clause begins with the relative pronoun and it is joined with the main clause by the use of this relative pronoun. So, the lady is my aunt. This is the main clause because it makes a perfect meaning. It makes a sense on its own, isn't it? The lady is my aunt. There is a subject, there is a verb as well. So, this makes an independent meaning. And who is driving the car is also called a dependent clause because this part of the sentence, this clause does not make a sense without this main clause. Hence, this relative clause is joined to the main clause with the help of the relative pronoun who. Have you understood now how a relative pronoun joins the relative clause to a main clause? Now look at the second example again. The town where I was born is one of the most populated cities in India. Sorry, how can it be cities? One of the most populated towns in India. So the town where I was born is one of the most populated towns in India. In this sentence you will find again the town, comma, where the relative pronoun is here, which means that the relative clause begins from here. So where I was born, this is the relative clause, okay, joined by the relative pronoun where. And what is the main clause of the sentence then? Then the town is one of the most populated towns in India. Does the sentence have a meaning of its own, children? Does this main clause make a sense on its own? The town becomes our subject here, and is the verb here, and this is what is being said about the town. Hence, the town is one of the most populated towns in India. This is the main clause which has an independent meaning of its own, and the main clause here helps the relative clause in the completion of its meaning. The relative clause begins with the relative pronoun where. This is how relative pronouns are used. Look at the third example also. This says that Rabindranath Tagore, who founded the Vishwabharati University, was a great poet. Rabindranath Tagore is our subject here, and Rabindranath Tagore was a great poet. Was is the verb, a great poet is the phrase here. This is the main clause, and the relative clause is, or the subordinate clause is, who founded the Vishwabharati University, who is again the relative pronoun here. I hope you have understood how to use a relative pronoun. It is very important to learn how to join main clause and dependent clause or relative clause with the use of a relative pronoun. Sometimes these may be also split into different sentences, and we can join these by using the relative pronoun. There is one more thing that you must have noticed, children. Relative pronouns refer to the nouns that come before them. Look at the sentences here. The relative pronoun who here refers to whom. Who does it stand for? Who here stands for the lady, right? The lady who. So who here stands for whom? For the lady. The town where. Where, talking about a place. This where relative pronoun stands for which place? The town. Rabindranath Tagore, who, again who, the relative pronoun here refers back to whom? To Rabindranath Tagore. In this case, when relative pronouns refer back to the nouns before them, used before them, these nouns are called their antecedents. So here in this sentence, Rabindranath Tagore is the antecedent to the relative pronoun who. In the second sentence, the town is the antecedent to the relative pronoun where, and in example 1, the lady is the antecedent to the relative pronoun who. I hope you have understood. Relative pronouns will be followed by a noun used before them, and the relative pronoun and the noun always will be called the antecedent of the relative pronoun. Now, apart from the relative pronouns that I wrote on the board, if you open page 50, on top you will see there are also other pronouns apart from the ones, those like that, whom, whose, what. These are all used as relative pronouns. There are some compound words also, such as whoever, whomsoever, whatever, whichever. These also can be used as relative pronouns. These are mainly used to join two sentences. So these are also used as in when you are asked to fill in the blanks with correct pronouns, with correct relative pronouns. You can also make use of these according to the meaning of the sentence. Whose, remember, always stands for possession. That's the possessive form of the word who. So we use who, the possessive form of the word who and which is used as whose in a sentence followed by a noun. So children, for today we have only this much. I have only this much to explain to you because it is only the relative pronouns which were yet to be explained to you. Apart from this, there are two exercises, children. One is on page 50 Let's practice another page 51. Let's practice. These will be homework to you. Write down the answers in your book itself using a pencil. I will be sending you the answer key so that you can verify your answers with mine and make the necessary corrections. When you finish this chapter, I would suggest you whatever reference book you have at home, be it N.K. Agarwal, be it Renan Martin, do learn to join sentences using relative pronouns. That is very important. You can also practice, fill in the blanks using relative pronouns, fill in the blanks using correct relative pronouns. I'll try to send one exercise of at least 10 to 15 sentences so that you can practice these and perfect the use of the relative pronouns in the correct manner. Thank you so much, class. Have a nice day. Stay safe and do study. Bye bye, class.